What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, managing editor of Fightful.com, FightfulSelect.com. It is time for the Fightful Select Retro Review. I am joined, as always, well, as most times, by Mr. Warren Hayes. Warren, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Sean. It's another pleasure to be here. We got a fantastic show on our hands, too.
That we do. And we are joined by champion-level patron John Baez. John, my dude, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. This is awesome. Honor to be here.
You picked ECW One Night Stand for us to review as one of your perks, and then you use another one to be on the show. We're very excited to have you on. Why did you pick ECW One Night Stand 2006?
Well, I liked ECW 2005 and 2006, but 2006 just really holds a close place in my heart because, especially at the time with John Cena, really for the first time ever with the crowd getting on his case and just the way they reacted, and RVD, it was just a great moment. It had great moments. And,
I can't wait. I can't wait to talk about that match in particular and the crowd reaction because it's such a big story to this show. The event is kicked off with Paul Heyman targeting a lot of the WWE tropes, his old TNN deal, and a lot more. He touts their new TV deal with Sci-Fi, Warren. That did not end up being so hot.
No, and that's really, you know, if we want to talk about my takeaways from the show right now, the big dichotomy that existed with this show here is how hot and how it was a love letter to the old ECW, and it just showed that ECW as a brand still had the beating heart, still had the fan support. But then once they started on Sci-Fi, it started getting sad.
Now, John, this event was a big contrast from the year prior because the year prior was basically that was an ECW show. This was more of an ECW versus WWE show. Although there were some exceptions, you know, like FBI against Tajiri and Super Crazy. I love that match. But did you like that method that they took where they went WWE versus ECW?
I was a little mixed with it because basically what hurt me the most was the Sabu Mysterio match. Because how can you have an extreme hardcore rules match and the way that it did? And I know at the end they were trying to quote unquote protect Mysterio. Yeah. Even though from previous shows that I've seen, you've always mentioned how Vince McMahon used Mysterio as a way to show that he wasn't over as the champion. And I know that didn't help him out at all.
Can't wait to talk about that as well. Let's go ahead and get into it. Heyman thanks the fans, welcomes them to the rebirth of ECW. It is kind of sad to me knowing how much optimism I had as a fan. I was 19 when this came on, and I was like, hell yeah. ECW kept me in my house on Friday nights when I was in high school. Normally, I would have went out, and I was like, ECW's on. I'm going to watch ECW tonight. I'll go out Saturday night. So for that to come back, I was excited. I loved the way they kicked off this show. Taz could not wrestle anymore. Taz was out of the ring. He had been for years. And Taz was one of my favorite in-ring performers, period. I loved the way that Vince McMahon explained him on the rise and fall of ECW. He called Taz ECW's sawed-off monster. I was like, that's perfect. John, when you were a fan of ECW and you see Taz doing this, did you expect him to have a longer match, or did you expect the smoke and mirrors like this?
No, I do that, especially with the previous year where he just basically did a cameo at the last possible minute at the end when they had the whole smudge at the end. And also at the end of the day, I always thoroughly watched the shows when he was broadcasting on SmackDown and everything. And he's even mentioned during those times that he just can't do it anymore. You know, he didn't have it in him. But the very fact that they did that little tribute in the beginning, and that's exactly what I felt. It was a tribute just to Taz, let him have his moment with the King. And it was perfect. It really was, especially with the way they incorporated Joey. Joey Styles with the slap in the beginning and stuff. Oh man, it was perfect how they did it. So I think it was a great send off in a way for the Taz character, ECW wise.
He couldn't even scowl properly anymore.
And this was his last match he's ever had in any capacity. Like, you know, sometimes Bret Hart would come back at WrestleMania and he beat The Miz during that year too. Yep. This was the last match Taz ever had, technically. Warren Lawler slowly walked to the ring, and I thought this was great. Just his plodding, like pageant waves and all of that stuff, and then he slaps Joey Styles. That was hilarious.
That was, but wasn't it just the most Memphis thing though? It was 100% Memphis. I loved it, and especially when you know that. I mean, this was perfectly booked in the sense that you have Taz, who was one of the icons of ECW, and you have Lawler, who was one of the anti-ECW icons. In shoot interviews, he said that he hated ECW. He called it extremely crappy wrestling, not just because he was being fed the line by Vince McMahon on commentary. He really believed it. It was a perfect beginning.
Yep, they had the perfect mix.
Based on Hardcore Heaven 95 that we reviewed, sometimes I would agree. Other times it clicked and everything went really well, and you would get like surprise matches like Rob Van Dam and Balls Mahoney that would just knock your socks off and you wouldn't have expected. Styles jumps on Lawler's back. Taz puts him in a Taz mission, puts him to sleep. Taz had not competed for 4 years prior. Also, I liked, John, the look-ins at Joey Styles in the booth. It looked like he was in a completely different building, like the old ECW shows.
You had that authentic feeling. It felt great. It felt natural. It felt real. And like I said, I enjoy it. I felt it was the perfect way to start. It was the perfect. The crowd was amped, and right there, they just enjoyed the ride for the rest of the show. It was a perfect prelude. And
that's a great observation, because it was like they even used the original theme, right? Even the original video package, and how the entire thing was presented. You know, with when they would cut away, they do like the video scratch thing. That was so ECW. They were able to maintain that flavor, which was one of the reasons I think that why we were able to stay hype about it, because it was like, yeah, this feels real.
Well, for better or for worse, the crowd was hyped during Kurt Angle defeating Randy Orton. I gave this match a 5.75 out of 10. And the crowd was the reason it went above par. Make no mistake, this is a 5 out of 10 match, maybe a little bit less if not for the crowd. Kurt Angle's music had been adjusted at that point. I don't know if you all noticed this, but they did that to avoid the "you suck" chants. And I've heard a lot of people say, why'd they change it? Why'd they change it? That's why, because especially an ECW crowd is going to chant "you suck" at him while they're trying to make him their big baby face on ECW. John, they did chant "pussy," "break his ankle," "fuck you, Randy," "you got bitch slapped," "go fuck Cena." Which of these was your favorite chant directed at Randy Orton at the time?
I got to do one of Drew Gulak's PowerPoint presentations, because I love the ball. So basically, when push comes to shove again, the beginning, that was the theme of the night. They had the crowd from the start. The entrances alone, when Randy first came in, the smirks, the look in his face, it was priceless.
Yes.
Because he's looking at that New York crowd like, really? Are you guys serious? But at the same time, it looked like they were having a great time too. Everybody was into it.
Yeah.
And that's, that's, I know we'll get into it more later on, but that's the tragedy of how it ended up. When they did the TV show and everything like that, there was so much hope with this show and everything. But definitely the crowd. I'm from New York City, so that's my crowd.
There was actually some in-ring wrestling, although it wasn't incredibly exciting. Angle gave Orton his head and then shucked right out of it. Angle got posted, and then the "go fuck Cena" chants are directed at Orton. Angle goes through his signature moves, but this is a really slow-paced match. But in 2006, it might have been a little faster-paced because it was a really plodding time. Not as much as 2010, which we just reviewed on the Raw Retro review, but still. Orton hits his backbreaker and has good heat. Angle rolls through a body press for 2, eats a huge clothesline, but snags an ankle lock and wins. Warren, after this, Taz was really pushing Angle as a good fit for ECW. If I were them, I would have pushed that he did appear in ECW, even though it was that one time.
that one time where who did he almost get in a fight with? I can't remember.
Paul. He almost got in a fight with Paul Heyman because the Sandman got crucified on the show.
Crucifixion, yep.
Yeah. You know what? I actually thought that that Kurt transitioned pretty well here into that smash mouth kind of style of wrestling. You know, he was starting to get more of that swagger that he'd really developed more into once he got into TNA. And I think it translated really well for the ECW crowd. And for me, we were really watching two styles of wrestling coming together, where you had Orton, who has always been a safe worker, working that, you know, main event style, WWE, WWF style at the time, where Angle here was playing more of a realistic style, trying to be more grounded and so on and so forth. Perhaps calling back to the days of ECW when they had the Guerreros and the Benoits and the Malenkos, because I felt that this was kind of a tribute to those great wrestling matches that existed in ECW. Yes, there was the blood, there was the violence, but we also had fantastic wrestling matches from some great technicians. And I think this was a little nod to that. And I think it was also important that Angle won here because it was ECW versus WWF, and you couldn't have more of a WWF star that the ECW crowd hated, aside from Cena, than Randy Orton.
I think that, John, when Angle left, I think that's when WWE kind of gave up on the ECW brand. And I compare it a little bit to 205 Live, in that 205 Live has tried really hard to invest in that brand. They put Austin Aries, Enzo Amore, Neville in there. All of them are gone, but they're still creatively trying to do things. ECW, Vince McMahon and whoever was in charge at the time resisted a lot of stuff. Like, CM Punk should have been their guy early on after Kurt Angle left. Like, he was there, he was white hot, he got the chance at Survivor Series, and they do away with him at December to Dismember, or whatever the hell that crap show was that we covered. But I really think that Angle leaving the company, that was a big knife in the heart to them, because he was going to be a big part of this.
Well, the one thing I was going to say, the parallels in this match was amazing, because at that time we didn't know Angle was on his way out.
Yeah.
But also what I loved was how they said, quote unquote, Randy had broke his ankle for 2 months, when we all know what really happened.
That's a good point. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was funny how they emphasized that.
Yeah, because within 2 months, Angle was gone, and Orton would be suspended twice in 2006 after that.
Yeah. FBI with Big Guido defeated Yoshihiro Tajiri and Super Crazy. Tajiri and Crazy were rivals in the old ECW. Guido is a real shooter. A lot of people don't know that about him. He wrestled in UWFI, and for those of you who aren't educated on that, go check it out. I don't know how he is physically, but little Guido strikes me as one of those guys, like a La Parka or a PCO. If he went out on the independent circuit and worked that style, he would have really good matches with people and probably get a lot of bookings. I'd be very surprised if he didn't. Also, I am a huge fan, John. You're a New York guy, right?
Yes, sir.
Big fan of the Beastie Boys inspired theme for FBI.
Oh,
yes.
Love it.
That's one of the things I love so much, because they gave everybody that intimate feeling. That's how ECW was. I mean, like you said, Beastie Boys. What's more New York than that, especially in Brooklyn? And again, we'll get into it later on also, when we had Sandman and Metallica. It was just awesome. It just worked. It just fit. And like I said, later on, we'll get into the Sandman part, because that hurt me a little too, that moment. But yeah, the Beastie Boys, come on. It's no more New York than that. And yes, that was awesome. I love that theme.
Huge welcome back chance for Super Crazy. One of my favorite spots in wrestling, and the subsequent reaction from Super Crazy on that short arm scissors slam, where I think Guido or Mama Luke has Super Crazy in a short arm scissors. Crazy rolls his body around, gets behind the guy, lifts him up, deadlift, and then drops him back. And then he does this great look at the camera, and he's just like, and it was perfect. He had like this free fall sit out as well. FBI tries to regroup, and Crazy hits both with an Isai moonsault to the outside. Big Guido gets involved, takes out the baby faces, and then miscommunication from Crazy and Mama Luke. Fortunately, does not end poorly, but Crazy called a flapjack. Mama Luke tried a back body drop more, and we almost got super paralysis on our roster.
Well, you see, when you have talented people who are in the ring and they have these little moments, these little slips, they're able to avoid them. You know, it kind of reminds me of that infamous moment where I think it was in the WCW when Chris Jericho does a lion salt onto Mr. Perfect, right?
Yeah.
I think we've all seen this gif, and he almost breaks his neck, but literally it's Kurt Hennig who saves him from actually breaking his neck.
Yeah. So they make references to Nunzio's penis size on this because he's got big shoes. He does a second rope drop kick to Crazy while he's in a camel clutch. Beautiful spot. Super Crazy then applies a tarantula, which was a nice turn of the tides. And I like they mentioned he's been in that so many times. It's good that he could do it to somebody else. Then helps take out Big Guido. We get a very cool drop kick that flips Crazy out of the ring and into the crowd. And then the FBI hit a double Fisherman's Buster on Tajiri for the win. I gave this a 6.25 out of 10. This was a very good match, John. I really enjoyed this.
Well, especially like you told, that crazy ending, it was a beautiful car wreck. And nobody got hurt, thank God. And at the end of it, even the cars were okay. But basically, I enjoyed the match very much too. And it's about ECW because back then, there was no Lucha Underground. The Indies were literally the Indies. So this was the chance for you to see these guys. And they were great. I mean, it's like I almost wish that they were around today because we could see them, all over the place. They just wouldn't be stuck in one area, and stuff. And I'm glad, it was fun. Mm-hmm. No, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I'm glad we all enjoyed the match. You know who else enjoyed the match? Tajiri. He was having the time of his life. Yes. I don't think there was a single moment where he, aside from your natural reaction when you take a bump, where he was not smiling. He was having the time of his life. He was enjoying every moment of this.
Yeah, he was. To update you guys on match times, the first match went 35 seconds. Second match went 15 minutes. I think maybe a little too long. This one went 12 and a half minutes and was really good. And this was a real good indication of how you get one guy over who probably wasn't over beforehand, because the Big Show with this crowd was not over before this moment. He came out to a smattering of why we know you all are putting him in ECW type of thing. And I don't know that anybody I've ever seen got a crowd to shift quicker than this. And this was the right moment. The way that he murdered Tony Mamaluke, John, with this Cobra Clutch and the backbreaker. Because at that point, we didn't see a lot of Cobra Clutch backbreakers. But then he slings Mamaluke, who still has not stopped spinning to this day. It's a great way to get Big Show. I thought it was outstanding.
It worked out perfect. I mean, you just said it yourself. It was the perfect way to put him over. And Big Show, he knew this was his chance. Like, okay, this is my chance to get over with the crowd. So I'm going to give him something to remember. And he sure as hell delivered that day. He was awesome. And that's another thing that was just so funny about how things ended up with the Kurt Angle change, because after Kurt Angle left, obviously they tried to put it all on Big Show, down the road and stuff with the title and everything like that. But I definitely agree with you 1,000,000%. That's how you put yourself over.
And another thing, like I said earlier, how I felt that this show was a love letter to the old ECW, that they were doing a lot of callbacks. This is 911, right? This is exactly what 911 would do. He'd get into the ring after the match and he'd beat the shit out of people. That's exactly what Big Show does. And considering that the crowd was pretty smart to this kind of stuff, I'm sure that at least a quarter of the crowd was on to it and was like, okay, yeah, this is really cool. This is what they're doing.
Well, 100% of the crowd was on JBL chanting, "You suck dick" at him. And then he calls them fruit booties, which is a Stevie Ray term. JBL takes credit for making all of ECW stars that mean anything and says there was a certain fat, bald, blue bastard who sat in this ring and bled and cried.
And then what does he say? He said, "Do you know what happened to me? Nothing."
Yeah.
Right?
Doesn't age well, does it?
No, not a good look.
He announces he'll be moving to the commentary booth. He'd come back the next year and had about 115 matches left in him, but would wrap things up completely under 3 years later. I don't know if this was necessary. I mean, it was a good heat spot, but it's like, I guess. Well, I don't know if you want to do this before the Rey Mysterio match, because you don't really want heat on Rey Mysterio. You want heat on Edge, Mick Foley, and Lita. So I don't know. John?
The one thing I was going to say was right behind him, there was a guy in a Mysterio mask. Yeah. And I used to get thrown up like, what's Mysterio doing up there?
I thought that too. I was like, why's Ray up there? Yeah. Speaking of Ray and Sabu, they went to a no contest. I gave this a 6 out of 10. Good match. I was never a big fan of Sabu because he was hit or miss, but seeing some of his 2005 TNA stuff, like Warren, what we covered on Unbreakable, I was excited to rewatch this. They had a chair duel. Then Sabu hit Poetry in Motion. Got a little bit botchy right afterwards, as Sabu sometimes does. The crowd hates the 619. They wanted no parts of it, which Mysterio misses. He gets a chair thrown at his head. Warren, when Sabu is really hurt, you can tell because he talks a lot. He's like, goddamn, I hit my fucking ear. The guy who had never talked on screen before this goes, my earlobe or something. It really hurts. I think I dropped a contact lens. That's Sabu every time. And he holds it at the expense of everything else, which I don't know if is great selling or him compromising the integrity of the match. Do you know? Am I the only one that notices this, Warren?
Well, now that you mention it. But see, I always chalked it up to just like selling, but maybe it is like something a little more insidious because honestly, like with the bumps and the craziness he's endured over the years, you'd think he would have done it more.
Yeah. You know? That's the thing. He's not like tied up in barbed wire sometimes. Like he takes a drop kick to the shoulder and he'll just hold onto his shoulder like it's broken. I don't know. An Arabian. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think he's just getting in touch with his inner Terry Funk.
Yeah, that's fair. We get the dumbass hold the ropes while a guy does his move spot, which the move is good, but I hate Mysterio literally holding on to the ropes the whole time.
And I hate that. I hate that move too, Sean. And I was kind of reassured that it's not like a contemporary thing, that it's not a new thing. I was glad to see it being done back in 2006. So it's like, okay, there's a history of crappiness here.
Arabian facebuster lands, then Ray does a senton plancha through a table in a very awesome spot. Sabu flies through the air with a leg lariat, then almost kills Ray with a triple jump moonsault. It was more like a knee drop to the face.
It landed square on Mysterio's face. I'm surprised he didn't get a broken jaw or an orbital socket or whatever. Yeah. That was nasty.
Well, Ray certainly should have sold it more, but Ray misses a chair senton and gets the chair right in the penis.
That was for you, John. That's because you're here. Yes. He never does it just for us, just between me and him. He never does it.
Thank you. I am honored.
So then he eats one right in the head, then one on his shoulders. The match ends in a no contest after one of the most psychotic freaking spots I've ever seen in my life. They have a table bridge, and there's a springboard DDT from the top rope to the outside, on and through the table. And the commission guy, listen, no, they can't fight anymore. It's over.
And for a minute, I thought it was Bill Alfonso. Like, I didn't have to double take.
No, Dad, they can't fight anymore. They can't do it. I hate going back on the network and hearing him blow that damn whistle all the time. But John, this spot was unbelievable.
And that's what I said before. That's the tragedy of it. Why did you have to end it with that?
Yeah.
I mean, it reminded me, in all seriousness, in the late 90s or early 2000s when I used to go to the house shows all the time at the Garden, and they would have the Big Boss Man versus the Big Show in a hardcore match. Oh, yeah. And they would end in a disqualification or a count out. How was it a hardcore match? You're going to end it that way. And just to see, especially the way they emphasized it in the beginning, the announcer, Extreme Rules match. Well,
you know. And it's a no contest. I completely agree with you. If anything, just have Mysterio do the move, roll Sabu in and pin him. I don't think it hurts Sabu to lose to the world champion. Maybe they thought it hurt Sabu to lose to the world champion because they had been beating their world champion all the time on TV. Yeah. Warren, what'd you think of this match?
I'm surprised at your rating, Sean. I didn't care for it much. I think the botches at the beginning really took me out of it, and I felt it was going really, really slowly, and I was wondering, and I even went on the internet and I checked and I was like, was Sabu injured, like severely injured? Was there something more to what he usually carries? I didn't think the first 2/3 of the match really worked. Then things started to pick up at the end towards the latter third of the match where I was like, okay, all right, now we're getting into something. And I was like, oh, so we're in for a 20-minute match here. They've been building. Let's go. And then it ends with that crazy spot.
That's what pushed the rating up for me because I had never seen it before. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what entertains me in wrestling is just not seeing or seeing things I haven't seen before. But I agree, man. I had that in my notes, actually, that the botches and the things that didn't make sense didn't help. But with these ratings, I also factor in crowd reaction. And that pushed Randy Orton and Kurt Angle up. Right. Like 3/4 of a point for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great crowd.
But when the commissioner came in and ended the match, I was like, oh, really? Because it felt really like, okay, now it's starting to pick up steam. Now we're telling the story.
We're invested. Yeah. Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
No.
Okay. Basically, the other thing, especially in the beginning of the match, it actually showed you a little too that, you know, Sabu can wrestle, doing holds and everything like that. He knew how to wrestle. He just became invested with obviously the spot fests and stuff. And you know,
I mentioned that Balls Mahoney Rob Van Dam match earlier. That was another one where you really see that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
Edge, Mick Foley, and Lita defeated Beulah, Tommy Dreamer, and Terry Funk. Yes. So Foley trolls the crowd about selling out MSG and praises Stephanie McMahon's ECW influence.
Long live the Alliance.
That was so fantastic. He was so funny. Edge comes out and says that the fans are going to beat off to Lita tonight. And then Lita calls Dreamer the innovator of silence. And the thing is, I think that she really thought that was a good line. But Mick Foley and Edge knew it was the shits. But they laughed at it like they thought it was the funniest thing ever, which is what a heel should do. It was hilarious for all the great reasons. The promo is terrible. Beulah comes out with Dreamer and Funk. And
okay, can I just jump in? Just since we're talking about the promo, I wrote down Edge says, "Don't want to mess with these idiots." I think he's saying this to Lita, talking about the audience. You don't want to mess with these idiots. This is their Christmas. Only their Santa is Jewish, bald, and gives out an endless supply of bullshit.
So this is so good but bad, and so bad but good. In my notes, I put Beulah comes out and says she wants a 6-person match because Lita is a slut. That's it.
It's as good a motivation as any. People on SmackDown last year were feuding because of a rating system. So why not?
That's all you need.
Oh my God, that was just. She was just basically like, "You're a hoe. Let's fight." Okay,
I got the pop.
So there's some brawling going on early, and the women kind of stay out of it.
The whole match.
Yeah. Edge gets hip tossed into the ladder. Funk helicopters the ladder and then gets pushed off of it. And his head slaps the mat real hard, John.
Yes. God bless.
This match went about twice as long as the 9.5 that Sabu and Mysterio did. And a lot of it was Terry Funk getting his ass whipped.
And that's what I was going to say. To think he was 61 at the time. Oh, my God. 61. Yeah. God bless him. Oh, man. Terry Funk, the original Hardy before Jeff Hardy. Because that guy, and to this day, I mean, I know he doesn't do it anymore, but to see that he's still doing the appearances, and just God bless him, everything he's put his body through. True testament. What a man.
So this match does go 18 minutes and 45 seconds. This is getting pretty brutal. Edge and Foley suplex a barbed wire board onto Funk. Then Funk turns the tides and makes them eat barbed wire next. Foley gets slammed by his hair into that board, Warren, so hard.
Yeah, it was gruesome, but I mean, see, again, if I want to help continue putting myself over, it's like I said at first, as this match are nods to everything that made ECW fantastic. Well, here you go. You have your chaotic tag team match with the blood, with the weapons, and with Tommy Dreamer in a tag team match. Only Raven isn't on the other side, but Edge, this entire match, is Raven for the whole fight. And that's what's amazing. It actually gave me shivers at some point because he's emulating Raven so well right up until we get to the finish.
There's a Sacco on Beulah, and then Dreamer comes the aid. John, I want to put over the Sacco spear is an awesome double team move. Foley has Sacco one. Edge hits Dreamer with the spear. Am I the only one in love with this move, John?
No. That was awesome. The way they and another thing, what I loved is when he first put on Sacco, he put it on Beulah. That was great. Gave her a little taste of it. But basically, yeah, that was an awesome move. And basically, you could just tell these guys did their homework. Like you said before, Mr. Hayes, about Edge being Raven. It's so true. These guys were fans. These guys appreciated what these guys did in ECW. And I think it was a perfect tag team tribute match. They filled in the pieces. Like you said, obviously the Raven wasn't there, but Edge was Raven. And the way Edge and Foley worked together after killing themselves at WrestleMania 22, it's amazing. Amazing what they did.
Terry Funk reemerges with a barbed wire 2x4 and cleans house. He sets it on fire and beats Foley with it. Foley goes through the board, and then Funk is soon to follow. This was a filthy spot. This was violent. They had to be cut out at the end, Warren.
But the visual, though, right? When Terry Funk is coming back and he's bandaged up, and his entire left side is entire it's full of blood, and he's got the bat. And then when he lands, like you said, on the barbed wire, and at the end, he's like, cut me out. I swear, that's my Halloween costume this year.
So Edge is being choked out by Dreamer, and Lita saves him, and a cat fight breaks out. Dreamer does a Dreamer driver away from the hard cam and poses, and appropriately attacked by Edge, like, hey, the camera's this way, asshole. And then there's a spear on Beulah, and Edge humps her for the win. This match, I gave it a 6 out of 10 because it was just nonstop violence and excitement and reaction, but it doesn't really match up with my tastes. But to a traditional ECW fan, John, this seems like it'd be right up their alley.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we had that spot that we said earlier with Terry Funk with Sabu. My eye. I just remember him screaming that out all throughout. And then obviously selling it when he came in bandaged up later on. But the one thing I want to say also about Edge was just how his character, it was just so amazing how he ended that match. How he made that, reality gimmick with Matt Hardy and Lita, that whole triangle, and he just made it that character. And that skyrocketed him to a whole other level. And he showed it with the way at that end with that pin. I was just like, oh, God, this guy's milking it all the way, that character.
Warren, how did you feel about this match?
I had a lot of fun because one of my favorite parts of ECW were the tag team matches. Like when we reviewed Hardcore Heaven 95, which that was the highlight of the match. Everything was crazy. There was stuff going on everywhere. The camera work was all over the place, trying to keep up with the action. This is the feeling that you got. And I was really happy that Edge embraced this Raven role that he had, because my God, Dreamer and Raven, it was one of the foundations of ECW from 95 on. And then then of course, Scott Livy left for WCW. But even when he came back later, They won the tag team titles together, and there was still tension between the two. Like, this is a feud that's on par with Lawler Dundee or Flair Steamboat as far as history and storytelling goes. It was kind of a shame that they couldn't patch things up with Raven, with Scott, before going into this, because I think that would have just made the event to have Dreamer and Raven beat the tar out of each other again, and Raven sneaking in with another fucking win, you know?
Yeah.
But
well, Raven was under a TNA deal at the time. They had him for years, so wasn't possible. We also had this weird random, I didn't even remember it being advertised, didn't remember it happening. Balls Mahoney beat Masato Tanaka in about 5 minutes. I didn't think it was good, guys. Power slam early. Tanaka screwed up Piscata. There's another chair duel, which seemed weird to me 2 matches after Mysterio and Sabu had one. So I think that based on everything that happened in Mysterio and Sabu, like if they talked that over, they should have just let Mahoney and Tanaka have that. But Mahoney kills Tanaka with a like violent chair shot. This wasn't really a match though, Warren. I give it like a 4 out of 10.
It was a breather, you know. It was just a little something to tie it to give the audience a moment to relax from the show that just happened previously, the tag team match heading into the main event. My only complaint is that this is what they had Masato Tanaka do, you know, who was formerly an ECW world champion, who had those legendary matches with Mike Awesome. It's kind of too bad that this is all they had for him, kind of thing.
That's what I was thinking also, because the year before, him and Awesome's match was brutal. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, that chair shot at the end was brutal. But how many tables did Tanaka go through before Awesome was finally able to pin him the year before? So, but like you said, it was a filler. That's all it was. It was a 4 or 5 minute filler, calm the crowd down to get him amped up again.
When I think of this, I'm like, all right, I didn't like filler. I didn't like the filler. It made me a little bit disappointed, considering, I mean, they had Just Incredible. He had been rendered pointless by WWE at that point. He was around. There were some other guys around, but also around was Eugene, who came out and cut a promo, and he read a poem to the crowd. ECW is the place to be. I love Terry Funk and RVD. Stevie Richards makes me howl. When I take a bath, I want to use Taz's towel. ECW is not phony. I want to hug Balls Mahoney. I want to hug all of you and have a picnic with Sabu. And Eugene was appropriately perplexed. Now, Nick Densmore, I think, had he not had his personal problems, he could have been a good upper mid-card heel. You know, there was the ready-made storyline, I faked it all along type of thing. It was there for them. But boy, did he play this crowd like a fiddle. You want to talk about reading the room? WWE, ECW, they read the room here, because Sandman came out and beat the shit out of him with a cane. I loved the great sense of anger that Sandman had in this entrance. He was seething, and you could tell he was waiting on a cue, but it didn't matter because he was seething while he was waiting on that cue. John, I know that the music, the adjusted music, hurt you in the heart a little bit, and probably appropriately so.
Yes, it did. I have to be honest with you. Again, taking a Fightful podcast history, I knew back then that was the night ECW died. Because basically, I just knew, watching back then, I was like, wait, where's the music? I was like, this is supposed to be ECW. And I just knew right then, like, oh, no, they're not gonna do right by this. And it didn't take long. I mean, don't get me wrong, Kurt Angle leaving and RVD getting busted, you know, that didn't help either. Yeah. But basically, you know, right off the bat, that's all it took. Sabu's, even though it was a brutal beatdown, I loved every second of it. It just wasn't the same. It just right there and down. It's like, no, they're gonna screw this up.
That's another good way to look at it. Like, I almost completely forgot that less than a month after this, Sabu and RVD get popped. Kurt Angle is gone. Those are three of your biggest stars on this show. So then what you're left with, especially RVD and Sabu, is this WWE light. However, I thought CM Punk fit right in there. I thought that CM Punk, you slid him in there. Okay, of course. He looked like an ECW wrestler, right? So, yeah, man, it's sad to just think of the series of events that unfolded right here. Warren, what did you think of this segment?
I don't want to beat a dead horse because I think
Seething!
I think every time that when anyone on the internet talks about looks at old pay-per-views and sees Eugene footage nowadays, you know, we all have the tendency to say, wow, this would never fly. But if you want to take it in context, like you said, the self-awareness that WWE had about its brand versus ECW throughout the match, even with the JBL promo, right? Yeah. ECW was always the underdog fighting against the big corporations, the big machine. We're anti-establishment. We never sold out. It knew what it was doing. WWE knew exactly what it was doing when it was sending Nick Dinsmore out there. But here's the thing. Nick Dinsmore, in an interview, he's on record as saying, I didn't know I was going to be on the show until 12 hours in advance. Like he knew the day before that he was going to go on there. He comes to the reunion and says, okay, what do you got for me? Well, you're going to read a poem and Sandman's going to come beat you up with a cane. And he's like, all right, cool.
He did a great job.
He did a fantastic job.
I thought this was a very fun segment. Great way to reintroduce Sandman, albeit even though the music changed. And then finally we had it. Rob Van Dam defeated John Cena to win the WWE Heavyweight Championship, which was rechristened as the ECW Championship after 20 minutes, 45 seconds. I'm on the fence between 6.75 and 7, but man, this crowd was an 11.
Yes.
Let's talk about this crowd. Rob Van Dam had won the Money in the Bank contract and cashed it in ahead of time. Cena tries to throw his shirt in the crowd, and it just keeps getting thrown back, John. This was they couldn't have scripted this, and nothing else better could have happened. This was the best possible thing.
I think this was one of my top 5 favorite moments in my life watching wrestling, because you nailed it. It was perfect. The crowd didn't want him. The crowd didn't want him there. They just wanted nothing to do with him at all. And they showed it with the chants, throwing back the shirts, and just and what Cena did a great job. He just kept on saying, okay, I'll throw it somewhere else. Don't want it there. And nope. Okay, I'll try over there. And the crowd, like I said, that crowd was an 11. It's so true. They made that match from the start, and it was just an awesome beginning.
Let's talk about this crowd. They chanted same old shit at Cena after signature spots. And the way that Cena decides to switch it up is by doing a single axe handle off the top rope to the outside, like a sledge, I guess they would call it. And the crowd was like, we see what you did there. But then they chanted, you still suck. But I remember seeing that and I was like, I've done that before. And that's not easy on your knees. It's like, it's a ways up.
Yeah, I thought he was going to hurt himself.
Yeah, your head is probably, in a WWE ring, your head's probably 13, 14 feet off the ground at that point when you're accounting for the 3-4 feet in the ring, then another 4-5 feet maybe there, and then the 6 feet tall he is. That's not easy, but that axe handle, boy, it was something. RVD hit. Go ahead.
No, about the audience again, they were more than hot. This was a hostile crowd, but not like hostile Tommaso Ciampa hostile. This was old school territory. We're about to riot hostile.
Because middle fingers in your face type of thing.
I mean, when Cena was outside of the ring running around, people, their faces were contorted and screaming garbage at him, Ciampa gets heat, but everyone's it's kayfabe hate. You don't really hate Tommaso Ciampa because he's a great performer kind of thing. Here, they didn't want nothing to do. The infamous, well, not infamous, but famous, iconic, if Cena wins, we riot crowd was the sentiment. That was real.
In an alternate universe, I almost wish we could have seen what would have happened if Cena won.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
Just to see how it would have worked. RVD hits the moonsault press off the apron, but goes back to the well too many times and gets pushed into the crowd. He then, back in the ring, he skateboards a chair into Cena's face. I loved that spot. And hit a rolling thunder. Raven told me that RVD always kills people with that move, because I had talked to Raven for making a finisher, and I was like, we were talking about the rolling thunder, and he said, I always loved the way that move looked. I said, yeah, RVD always looked like he did it really light, or that he killed people. And Raven said, oh, he always killed you with it, without a doubt, destroyed you. Cena recovers to catapult RVD into a chair in the corner, and you can guess how the crowd reacts to the 5-knuckle shuffle. It's not good.
No, they were in no mood for any types of shenanigans like that. Cena had there was a hit put out on him that night for sure.
The tornado bomb he did out of the corner, which is where you grab somebody essentially by one leg and then power bomb them, didn't do him any favors. He didn't get a great new move or anything like that. They weren't down for that. So he applies an STFU, now known as the STF. He won't let it go. And then when the ref questions him, he punches the ref. This is the Cena that I want today, John.
They tried everything with him with that match. The only thing I would have loved, because I saw this match recently again. What I would have loved was that move that he did in China.
Oh, God. Oh, God. How dare you? How dare you
do that? The only reason why I'm saying that is because, like I said, I'm from New York. That New York crowd, I think, would have rioted. They would have jumped in the ring if he would have done that move to RVD.
So at the time, did you try to go to this show?
No, not at that time. I was I was actually working in television, actually. So I was covering. I used to work in sports and radio. So basically, I was working that day. I did not get to see the show either on pay-per-view. I just waited, got the DVD, knew about it already from War and stuff. But yeah, I used to be like that. If I wasn't able to catch the show, I waited until the DVD came, got it, saw it, and stuff. But I wanted to so bad, and stuff. But I've gone to some great shows, but that one I really wish I could have gone to that one.
Let me ask you guys, who turns heel first, John Cena or Roman Reigns?
Oh, like at this stage of the game?
Yeah.
Neither. they're going to stick to their guns.
Look at the potential. John Cena punching this ref was beautiful.
Listen, I mean, this is exactly the match that everyone who's always begged for a Hina heel turn. This is what Hina heel turn. Cena heel turn. This is the match we've all wanted to see, and by God, I'll be damned if he didn't enjoy every moment of it as well. Probably as much as Tajiri did in his match. And I don't know how scripted or placed it was for him to push then punch the ref, because it feels so much out of character for Cena. I kind of wonder if it's not just something on the fly he decided to do, because he was reading the room. He was there and he was like, look, if I do this, this will just add so much more heat.
I think Roman, I've heard you guys say it. I feel the same way. Me and my son talk about it all the time. WWE will never turn Roman heel. But Cena, especially now that he's not around all the time, I can see him once in a blue moon. Do it. What the heck? Have a little fun with it.
See, if you recall his match in the Gauntlet match, was it the Gauntlet? No, his match that he had with Roman Reigns a couple of months ago on pay-per-view, like, he was playing the heel part in the ring. Yeah. He was in control. He was slowing stuff down. It's not that Cena can't do it and can't do it well. We've seen it recently. We've seen it in 2006. He can pull it off. I just don't think WWE wants their golden boy to be a heel.
That's why
it's wild to me, because Conor McGregor is throwing dollies at buses and the UFC is falling over themselves to book him.
That's a whole other story. Yeah. But the only thing, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the only thing I would say with Cena is I think that's why and it wouldn't be permanent, but just like what they did with The Rock when they used to bring him back every year. One year he would be bad, one year he'd be good.
Yeah.
You know, why not with Cena these days and everything like that? I think that could happen more than a Roman heel change. That's basically what I'm saying.
Nick Patrick is out, but he gets punched after Edge spears Cena through a table. Edge shows up in a motorcycle helmet with a jacket on and technically spears Edge through a table, or spears Cena through a table. Although I think Edge gets more of it than Cena. Like, he goes all the way through it.
Definitely.
Thank you, Edge, from the crowd. Although I don't really think that this match needed that, John. I think this was a way that WWE could protect Cena, but I think they should have used it to get somebody in ECW over. This should have been an ECW guy, whether it be Big Show or whoever, who then on the next week on ECW said, I got you your title shot, now you're giving me one. Or I got you your title, now you're giving me one.
I think basically what WWE did was give you the crowd what they wanted with RVD winning, but they gave you a WWE finish to it, you know, with the controversy. Yeah. they kind of sort of gave the good old to the crowd, like, hey, this is our show still, you know, your letters, but our show. And that's how I basically did it, because they emphasized right away, if you remember, I don't know how recent you've seen it, their one-on-one match at Vengeance, RVD and Edge. You know, they said, okay, well, RVD is going to wrestle Edge now. Edge is the wonderful number one contender. And that was the Vengeance main event at that time. And basically, that's what I think it was. It was a WWE ending on an ECW show.
Well, RVD hits a 5-star frog splash, but the ref is down. Now, I don't want either of you counting a pin on me, because apparently anybody with a headset is legal to count pins. Because Paul Heyman comes out, and he does this weird thing where his body moves, but his face and his head doesn't. He was like, and he's like, it all while he's running to the ring. And, Rob! Rob! Hey! And then he counts the 3.
I almost think that wasn't the original ending, and Paul Heyman just said, "Screw it, this is how I'm ending the show. Just cover him."
Oh my God! Whew. So
I didn't care at all for this ending. It actually kind of made me pissed off, because I feel like everyone got over except RVD on this ending. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I understand that Edge and Cena at the time were involved in a feud. They could have kept that away. They could have kept that separate for now, you know. And I'm 100% with Sean on this. This was the moment to crown your big ECW guy. Have him have the big win over Cena. Like Hogan has done it before. A clean win. Hogan has done it before. You know, why couldn't Cena do it here in this environment? Why did it have to be overbooked? Why did Paul Heyman have to come and take a moment where it's like, oh, look, Paul Heyman saves the day? Man, this was RVD's moment. Yeah. And it was split between too many individuals for it to really be cool.
RVD exits through the crowd and Big Show hits the ring, and I'm like, what is Big Show doing in there? Like, is he out there to beat up RVD? No, he's out there to celebrate. And we get like Mikey Whipwreck and Danny Doring and Trinity and Just Incredible and Alfonso, who aren't on the show. And the closer I looked, like, they've got drinks and beverages. They're sodas. They're not beers. They're sodas.
Oh,
like, you can very clearly see Just Incredible drinking a Diet Coke. And
my God.
I think it's a caffeine-free Diet Coke. What's the point, Justin? My
WWE ending.
He didn't want to blow any.
John, you're right. It's a WWE ending. No caffeine, goddammit. None. Jason Knight is out there too. Some guy who I have no idea, but that's basically the gist of who is in the ring. You have a celebration. But when I saw Trinity out there, I was like, that's cool. I was a fan of Trinity. Doring was out there in his gear. I don't know why Doring was out there in his gear. Did he wrestle? Did I miss something? I don't know.
Maybe he was supposed to wrestle Eugene. Just fell through the cracks at that moment.
God. That's ECW One Night Stand. It was a very fun show. Really, I thought Tanaka and Mahoney was the only match that went below par for me, and that is not an easy task for show of this era. John, as we reviewed this show, how do you look back on this show now, 12 years later, as we're filming this?
It's mixed because obviously the number one thing, like we said, how ECW ended up. Obviously, we couldn't predict Kurt Angle and the bust of Sabu and RVD. I do love the crowd. That's what it was all about. It was about the crowd because basically, I also looked at it as, like you said, the treatment of Rey Mysterio as champion from Vince McMahon. That was sad to see, and stuff. And also another thing that I remember hearing about back in the day, Benoit wanted to do a Eddie Guerrero tribute match with Dean Malenko. And WWE said no to that at the last minute. At first they were saying yes, then they said no to it. And I would have loved to have seen that tribute style match, and stuff. But I do, it's just bittersweet because there was hope. But like I said, when Sandman came out, I just knew back then. I just love the memories. So the two matches that stood out to me the most was obviously the tag team match, and I love the way the Cena RVD match was from the beginning with the crowd and everything being so hyped up. Those are the two things I'm going to remember the most, big time.
Warren, around this time, maybe a little bit before that, it was definitely the year before, a series of reunions called Hardcore Homecoming was promoted, along with the documentary, which I thought was outstanding, Forever Hardcore. It was, I don't know if you all ever watched that, but that really let me know how freaking crazy New Jack was. But there were a series of shows there. Did you take in any of those? Were either of you into the, okay, WWE's is a sanitized one, we're doing the real one? Because it had some of the same people. But you also had people like Team 3D and Raven and Rhino and guys who weren't on some of the originals or this one. Too Cold Scorpio, Kid Cash, Jerry Lynn.
Yep.
I mean, you had some real good names on there, I thought. And I thought that their show, from a star perspective, was probably on par with WWE's.
No, I agree. On my end, as you know, being all the way up here in Canada, sometimes it was a little difficult to get more things that were a little more off the beaten path. We even had difficulty getting WCW here for a time. But no, I mean, looking at the card and like I know about the card, I know reading about it online, I guess. There's a lot of people there that really did help define the really good stuff that came out of ECW. We mentioned Jerry Lynn, Tracy Smothers, I think, was on that show as well. And I even think that was the Blue Order. Were they all there? Like, I know Blue Meanie was there. I don't remember if Stevie Richards was there, but the point.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. Okay. So and of course New Jack. So there's a whole bunch of things happening there that maybe on one end is like, yeah, we'll do it our own way. But I think WWE wanted to co-opt that even further. Yes, we own the brand and we can still deliver. And WWE knew that they had an uphill battle as well with the ECW faithful. I found they demonstrated a really impressive amount of self-awareness during this pay-per-view as to what WWE represents to these fans. And I think they got across quite well the idea that, we're, as Stephanie McMahon would say, we listen to our fans. We know what you guys want. So here you go. We'll have RVD become champ. We'll have most of the ECW guys beat WWF guys. We're going to give it the feeling and the packaging that you want because, hey, we've got a show coming up in a couple of weeks, and we want you guys to tune in.
That's exactly what it is, that marketing. One quick thing I was going to say about the ECW DVD, I actually got it in New York City, the first ECW One Night Stand at Tower Records in Manhattan. Yep. And the Hardcore Forever DVD came with it.
Oh, really?
Yep. I got that. It was I couldn't believe it because basically I was like, wait, but
that's a competitor.
Yeah. It was
mixed,
but I think also it was one of those that that was like the best place ever because it had hard to find DVDs, records, everything.
Yeah.
So I think somebody did something special with that because that's But I had them both. I remember that was compilation and stuff. And yeah, I know it very well, the history and everything like that. And that's why I knew, like back to the beginning, that's why I knew it was bittersweet as much as I enjoyed it because I knew WWE was going to put their stamp in it because that's what they do.
Guys, thank you all for joining us. John, thank you for joining us. You all can pick topics. You all can hoard your rewards and appear on the podcast like our boy John did. But we got lots of cool stuff up there, guys. The Raw review from June of 2010, which was not fun to watch. But, we got lots of them. But, John, I want to thank you very much for joining us.
I want to thank you guys. First of all, Mr. Warren Hayes, like I always say, you're the man. So thank you very much. I love your passion. You guys are just awesome. Sean, you know how I feel about you. You're an awesome dude. I enjoy obviously watching you guys talk wrestling and other sports too. You know, I love that too. And the video game stuff you're doing. I love Fightful. It's a great company, and I'm looking forward to a long relationship. Thank you, guys.
Definitely. We thank you so much. Guys, until next time, let people know about us. Let people know you love us. We're out.